Ugh. January 23rd, 1959. A group of hikers start to travel to the destination of their hike in the Ural Mountains. January 29th. The hike itself starts. January 12th. The hikers are expected to arrive at their intended destination. February 21st. Search parties are sent out. February 26th. The group's tent is found. February 27th. The first body is found. The Dyatlov Pass incident is one of the most famous unsolved mysteries of all time due to its incredibly mysterious conditions. I will be going over key evidence, popular theories, and my personal conclusion as to what happened to the Dyatlov group. Many other people have covered this topic in way more depth than I have, so if you want something super in-depth, it's out there. I just wanted to cover it and provide my perspective, along with an introduction to the circumstances of the case. One of the strangest parts of this case is that nothing was strange in the events leading up to the incident. There were no signs, as far as we can tell, that anything was about to go wrong. Along with that, the autopsies and the state of the scene were incredibly strange. The most important evidence that informs popular theories and my theory are as follows. As far as the autopsies go, 6 of the hikers were ruled to be killed primarily by hypothermia, 2 by chest trauma, and 1 from a skull fracture. The force that would have been required to cause the chest trauma and the skull fracture were said to have been equal to that of a car crash, not able to be inflicted by another human. A few of the bodies had parts of their soft tissue removed, but these were ruled to be post-mortem. 1 hiker was found with injuries consistent with fist fighting. Several hikers had burns on their skin, likely from the campfire that was built, or possibly even from the stove within the tent. 1 hiker was found without a tongue. One of the details about the autopsies that throws a wrench in so many theories is that some of the articles of clothing on the bodies that were found had substantial levels of radiation that would not have been possible from just the natural surroundings. This could, however, be explained away by the fact that all of the contaminated articles of clothing belonged to people that had a history of working with radioactive material. There are more peculiar details to the autopsies, but those are the main and puzzling details. As far as the scene goes, first, the tent was cut from the inside, likely meaning that escape was such an urgent need that the group deemed it worthy of destroying their only shelter. 2. The group wandered off their planned path leading up to the incident. 3. The footprint suggests that the group walked down the hill in a single file line. 4th, the lower branches of a cedar tree at the bottom of the hill were broken off, possibly from an attempted climb or use for firewood. 5th, there was a campfire under the cedar. 6th, several of the bodies showed signs of being moved post-mortem, likely for others to use their clothing. 7th, when the group went off their planned route, they hiked up a place that the natives called Dead Mountain. From what I understand, this is what can be confirmed about the events that took place on the night of February 2nd, 1959. The group perceives an immediate threat that requires them to cut their way out of the tent. After that, the group walks down the side of the mountain for almost a mile to get to the woods. As some of the hikers die, the ones left alive take their clothes. That's all we really know. Many theories have been put forward as to what happened to these people. I'll go over a few of them along with my favorite one that I've seen before reaching my conclusion. The probably most popular theory is paradoxical undressing. When people have hypothermia, it can feel like they're burning, which leads them to take off their clothing, which only speeds up the process of freezing to death. A few of the bodies in this case were hardly clothed for a Siberian expedition, so this is how the theory got so popular. However, this theory doesn't take into account that some of the hikers likely just took clothing from those that died earlier. Another popular theory is that it was a Munsee tribe sacrifice. The Munsee tribe lived around the land that the events took place. The tribe had numerous spiritual practices, and it was theorized that they had sacrificed hikers for wandering onto the mountain that they called Dead Mountain. This theory also draws on the discovery of a Munsee chum that was found in the area, as well as a Munsee legend that their goddess of death required 9 victims. Another super popular theory is Soviet weapons testing. This theory focuses heavily on the mania that would be required to leave one's only shelter in such cold conditions, the radioactive traces found on some articles of clothing, and the fact that these events took place in the USSR during the space race. The 4th theory is that aliens did it. While technically possible, is pretty much just a cop-out, but draws on one strange photo from one of the cameras that the group had. This photo was the last one in its camera roll. Another popular theory is compressive winds. This theory mainly aims to reason why the hikers left their tent by cutting out of it. It claims that there could have been strong winds compressing the tent to the ground, leading to the hikers having to make a forced escape. The YouTuber Let Me Know uploaded his take on the incident on August 4th of 2016. His take is by far my favorite and the one I consider to be the most plausible. His theory goes as follows. Alright, this is a direct quote from the video. Something caused them to panic inside the tent, but once outside they calmed down and made a conscious decision to walk down the slope. Now take a look at this photo. The pipe sticking out of the tent entrance is the exhaust pipe of the internal stove. This was a completely unique and homemade design, as the leader of the group had built the stove himself. I think that after disassembling the stove and removing the exhaust pipe, the embers inside the stove were accidentally reignited. As the exhaust pipe had been removed, the smoke would have filled the tent in seconds. As they attempted to get control of the flame, they cut a few holes at the top of the tent to vent the smoke. When that didn't work and it became increasingly difficult to breathe, the side of the tent was slashed open and they all escaped in a state of panic. There's even more evidence to support this theory. Several members of the group were found with burn marks on both their bodies and clothing, which could definitely have been a result of the improvised fire under the tree, or perhaps a scalding hot metal stove. Some of them were also found with blood around their mouth, and coughing up blood could be a symptom of smoke inhalation. Then there's this photo, taken the day before the incident. The jacket has obviously been burned, but the question is, how? It's possible that sparks from the stove had accidentally set the jacket aflame. Okay, so they make it outside and quickly realize what a terrible situation they're in. Sub-zero temperatures, no shelter, underdressed in the middle of a snowstorm, in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. At this point, I think, one or more of them made the decision to head for the nearest shelter, which they would know to be the woods. The reasoning behind this decision is likely multifaceted. The smoke from the tent could have made it impossible to stay within its proximity, and/or the smoke may have caused them to believe that the tent was on fire, and they may also have believed to be closer to the woods than they actually were. So they finally reached the woods and immediately set out to make a fire. Some climbed the tree and scavenged the surrounding area, while those who are more properly dressed head a bit deeper into the woods. About 75 meters from the tree, 4 of them trigger a minor avalanche, taking them over the edge of a ravine with a drop of about 3 meters. As the bottom is filled with rocks and ice, they sustain lethal injuries. 3 of the other 5 hikers decide to head back for the tent, while the remaining 2 slowly freeze to death around a fading flame. Again, this is the published theory that I like the most out of all that I've seen, but it leaves one thing out, one thing that didn't come out until after the video was uploaded, but one thing nonetheless. The most recent governmental investigation, this was in 2020, came to the conclusion that the incident was caused by an avalanche. It was not caused by an avalanche. The forensics suggest that they walked straight down the hill, which would neither be preferred nor possible in the event of an avalanche. So that brings us to the big question. Did the government cover up what happened? I think so. Not just because of this recent conclusion, but also because of the initial autopsies. I believe that the reason that there was such a load of different injuries, along with the obvious hypothermia, the reason that certain details were included, like the radioactivity, light footsteps, and possibly even the interior tent cutting, was that the government felt the need to cover up whatever happened that night. The nature of the case makes it unsolvable. I believe that someone knows what happened that night. But one question remains. Why did the government feel the need to cover up what happened on Dyatlov Pass? I was first interested in Dyatlov Pass back when I watched a video on it years ago, and I'm still just about as confused on the topic as ever, but I'm now adamant that the investigation was a cover-up just because of the abundance of information that doesn't fit together, almost like it was designed to be unsolvable. Some people might think that's a cop-out, and it might be, but I literally am at my wit's end trying to find any alternatives that aren't cop-outs and actually make sense. There was one theory video I saw that talked about how maybe the group had discovered the Yeti, and then because of that they were bombed by the Soviet military. They came up with the Yeti idea from one of the photographs in one of the cameras that was recovered in the search, and I will admit it does look a little bit like the Yeti. It looks a lot a bit like the Yeti. If I would even know what the Yeti looks like. But if you look at other photographs in the same camera roll, you can clearly see that it was just one of the other hikers. And that's one of the things that irks me a little bit about researching this. I found that a lot of the time the videos that I would find were entertainment first and facts second, but that is to be expected from people who make their living off of entertainment. And I'm not putting myself above them either. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of errors that I happened to include in this video. But another thing that I realized from this project is the game of telephone with facts. Particularly in this case, some of the videos that I would watch said that the hikers were intoxicated. Some of them said that they weren't. Some of them, I think, didn't say anything at all. Lemino's video, in particular, said that they were intoxicated, but he later added a fact check saying that they weren't. So that's just the mishmash of different facts. Also, one thing that I did not mention was that Yuri Yudin, a man that was supposed to be with the hikers, he had to leave the trek due to sciatica, but that ended up making him the only survivor of the whole entire group. He believed that his friends were killed by a Soviet weapon. That's what I could find. Just an experimental Soviet weapon. So that gives more credence to my theory. Anyways, I've enjoyed this project. It's been a fun opportunity for me to conduct research on a topic that I find interesting. Along with that, it's encouraged me to do more things like this in the future. Hopefully they'll be a little bit higher quality though.